Okay, here we are at Mountain Gardens. It's about the middle of June, and we, meaning myself and the crew, are engaged in what we do every day, which is cleaning up beds in the garden, taking out what we have too much of, adding what we don't have enough of, new plants. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what the garden looks like overall, as opposed to the separate plant videos we're doing. So this illustrates my concept of becoming a hunter-gatherer in your own garden. Like the beds we plant, we'll clean up a bed and plant some new things, and then it usually gets neglected for a few years. Some things expand, some things die out, other things come in by seed. So it's all a sort of semi-wild garden of useful plants. And almost everything we're looking at here is a useful plant in one way or another. We might be taking a lot of it out because there's too much of it, but doesn't diminish the fact that it's a useful plant. One way I do hunter-gathering in my own garden is by selling these bare root plants now. I really would like to switch my nursery business from raising plants in plastic pots and having to take care of them and water them and everything to this bare roots idea where I just go out in the garden. When you order something, I go out in the garden, dig it up, wrap it up, and ship it off to you the same day. So part of my job is to be constantly aware of where there are populations of different plants. So a lot of it's just paying attention. So just to illustrate, we've got a lot of hostas in the garden. That's a good springtime edible. Eaten in Japan, hardly anyone in America knows you can eat it except the deer. By the time you eat it is when they're curled up in little tubes in the spring. This is the Japanese spikenard. Next to it over here we've got the American spikenard. This one's called Udo. I see maidenhair fern. There's quite a bit of Apios americana roaming around in that area. So we'll just do a quick overview of one little part of the garden and how many useful plants are actually in here. As I said, the job of the gardener is not so much to be fine cultivating everything as just to notice where things are and when you need them, where you can go and get them. There's a peony root if we need it for a blood tonic. So we'll do a quick overview of what this looks like now. It looks like just a jungly mess, and then we'll weed out some of it and we'll add some new plants and then let it go again. So Valerian is self-sowing all over down in this part of the garden. We always have plenty of the giant Solomon seal popping up here and there. Here's a dongwei, Chinese, the important women's herb in Chinese medicine. Over on this side we've got catmint. There's a high bush blueberry in here. There's lots and lots. This is a mint, probably peppermint. Yep. The whole area is overrun with jaugalan, Gynostema pentaphyllum, clambering into everything. Here's a nice lemon balm. There's a lot of celandine. We're going to be taking that out. So most of these we'll be taking out because we have so much of them in other parts of the garden. This tree here is the toothache tree, prickly ash Anthoxylum clava hercules. Very important medicinal tree. These are side sprouts of it that I'm leaving to dig up and transplant. Here's another one. This is a fairly rare plant called Miris odorata, the true European sweet Sicily. Very nice sweet flavored leaf that you can add to tea. Catmint, if I didn't mention it. Phlox, which we'll be taking out. But it's a nice ornamental, but there's a little more of it than we need. This is the Japanese parsley, mitsuba or honewort, a good wild edible. It's all over our garden. The spiderwort has edible greens in the spring. Kind of a weed in here, but a useful plant. This is one of the perennial foxgloves that are used medicinally. I believe that's Digitalis lutea. Down here is Scutellaria barbata, barbat skullcap, used for a big anti-cancer herb in Chinese medicine. There is the western motherwort, Leonoris cardaica, sowing itself around. Acaranthes bidentata, important Chinese herb. It's gotten to be a bit of a weed in this garden. I see some of the Chinese Solomon seal, Yuzhu. This would be the native giant Solomon seal. It's gotten to be very popular medicinal herb for bones and arthritis and so on. I see a rhubarb down here. That's probably one that we actually planted. A lot of what we're looking here is just sown itself into this area. So over there the shrub is cramp bark. There is quite a lot in this area of, well, there are several Chinese angelicas in here. All three of them are in here actually. The dongui I pointed out a minute ago. This is Bai Jur, used for nasal congestion, Angelica dahurica. This is Duhuo, Angelica pubescens, used for wind damp conditions. There's another of the dongui, the blood mover blood tonic, Angelica. This big yellow flowering thing is a perennial broccoli known as Turkish rocket. Makes little tiny broccolis, as many as you care to pick for as long as you want to pick them. This is Figwort, Scutellaria nodosa or Marylandica, used primarily externally for skin problems. There's a little corydalus that's gotten in here that's pretty weedy. Some medicinal action, although this is not recorded as a medicinal one, but all of it's poppy family, so they all have central nervous system alkaloids. Could be investigated. The main pain relieving herb in Chinese medicine, Yanhu Suo, is a corydalus. Here's the local Hypericum punctatum, which is actually a bit higher in hypericin than the perforatum, and doesn't have as many disease problems as perforatum. Perforatum's a little rare in this area. We're at the southern end of its range, but this punctatum grows very well, so we're trying to encourage that one to come in. This is a genuine weed here. There's not much of this is really a useless plant. Smartweed is one of the bigger weeds in my garden. We'll be taking that out. Although there is a polygonum tinctorium that looks a lot like this. It's an important dye plant and Chinese medicinal herb. Looks almost identical to this smartweed, which is probably Polygonum pennsylvanicum. There's two or three that look almost alike. So that's just a quick summary of what's going on in these what look like sort of neglected, overgrown, jungly area. There is, of course, red clover, very important herb against cancer and many other things, an alterative. And then we'll come in here and weed out what we don't want. And we'll take a picture of it again, and then we'll plant into the empty spaces some new things. And then 2 or 3 years later, it'll be all wildly overgrown, and we'll get back in here and do it again. All right, so here we are a day later. We've gone through and weeded out this bed. So, as I said, almost everything in here was useful, but most of it we have too much of. So, taken out a lot of the things that we have in other parts of the garden anyway. This is what we've left behind. The catmint and the blueberry lemon balms, and especially the Medicinal, and some little sprouts of the toothache tree, which we can dig up and pot up. And so now we have a lot of planting area, so we'll come back in here and fill in with new plants in these open spaces. And then it'll probably get neglected for another year. Let's see, out of here yesterday, first thing we did is go through and harvest jagulons. So we got this much. Is only about half of what we pulled out of this bed yesterday. We'll take this up and dry it. This is the sweet variety. So we've got this naturalized in a lot of the beds of the garden. So that's how we overhaul our garden beds.